Clara's Laugh. Written by your friendly neighborhood Ryro Stan. Read by Arashi. Clara's laugh was beautiful. Some would disagree, likening her laugh to a foreboding omen. But this was a hill Iruma would die on. She was always fairly open with expressing her emotions, around him anyways, and he had grown to adore them all, but her genuine laughter was unparalleled. Well, there was one person that paralleled how much Iruma liked Clara, but he was trying to bottle up how he felt about Asmodeus. It had been barely a week, and Iruma had thought he was handling his crush on the demon pretty well. But then he had to make some stupid joke, which elicited the most beautiful laughter, and his condition had been forever worsened. Because, of course, he couldn't fall in love with Asmodeus. No, his heart had decided that wasn't enough strain. No, he had to grow a crush on Clara, too. Last week had been terrible, his emotions making him sick for a whole day before he eventually accepted that, hey, he was gay. But this? Iruma didn't know how to handle liking two people of two different genders. Was there even a word for it? He was sure there was, but he was too scared to ask anyone. What if it wasn't normal? What if he was sent back to the human realm for being a freak? Iruma turned under his comforter, scowling at his negative thoughts. Why couldn't he think of nice things? Like imagining being able to date both of them, his mind supplied. That just seemed unrealistic. But it wasn't like it could hurt. He thought of how wonderful Clara's singing was. He thought of having her extended family take him under their wing. He thought of being able to live and act like a normal demon. He thought of how gorgeous Az's magic was. He thought of having tea parties with his younger sisters. He thought of growing into his role as a noble. He thought of being able to cuddle between them. He thought of going on adventures with them. He thought of sitting down for dinner with them at his sides. He thought of how he'd never get any of that. Not how he wanted. Iruma felt like screaming. Sure, he couldn't date both of them, and at this point, he definitely couldn't just choose. But did his subconscious really have to rub it in? Tears started to bubble up in his eyes. As he began sobbing, he bleakly realized that as much as he hated not being able to have them, he couldn't stand not having them. Not again. Clara's laugh wasn't the only thing he loved about her. Of course. No, her somewhat reckless bravery, her kindness, the way he could relate to her, not to mention that she was fun. Fun was still something he was getting used to, and she radiated it like the sun. Clara was fantastic at making him feel better, too. It was hard to feel down for long. She wouldn't allow it. Not to mention, she was cute as hell. Her big green eyes were constantly sparkling. Her smile was contagious. Her long hair shone brightly in the sun. Iruma couldn't get enough of her. He couldn't help but wonder how she hasn't been courted yet. Sure, she was brash, but she was one of the most wonderful people he had ever met. Clara was a treasure, and Iruma wanted the world to know. He really could go on for days about how much he loved Clara. He wanted to date her so bad. But there were a few key things stopping him from texting her to meet up. 1, he didn't want to choose between his best friends. 2, she might hate him if they started dating and she found out about his crush on Asmodeus. 3, she might not even like him back, which terrified Iruma. Finally, a small part of Iruma didn't want their dynamic to change. The bond between the three had grown even stronger over the break, and Iruma didn't want to break it, even if that meant not confessing to the cutest, most effervescent person that Iruma knew. Even though his heart ached, he resolved to keep these particular feelings to himself. If the class was close last year, they were inseparable this year. They were all friends, especially after Iruma properly explained what friendship entailed. Az and Clara were slightly bummed that they weren't Iruma's only friends at first, but as soon as they grasped that they could have their own friends, they were elated, which kind of stung, until they made it clear that they weren't really interested in befriending students outside of class, other than Amiri, the older demon having kind of inserted herself into everyone's lives. The class loved having impromptu hangouts that usually led to sleepovers. The class did almost everything on a whim, actually, to the point where Iruma never knew what he was going to do. It could be shopping with Ix, or gaming with Shax, or sometimes even studying with Alisir. Iruma had never had so many friends before, and he had to admit, it helped distract him from his crushes. He had been asked a few times if he had any, but after saying no, he didn't, They usually left him alone. Unfortunately, the lessened exposure to Clara and Az only made his feelings stronger. They were still his best friends, though. He'd climb the highest mountains, fight the most dangerous creatures, or swim across the largest body of water in all of the netherworld, if it meant they would still be in his life. His life had never been better, and hell if he was going to ruin that for himself.